This is what I experienced when I was a job seeker. I majored in a slightly special department at university. The number of majors was small and the field was limited, so the industry was quite narrow. In order to get a job using my major, it was common to receive a recommendation from a professor and participate in a job interview. I was not very interested in studying my major, so I prepared for civil service, but I was failing for the second year. I was in a situation where I had to give up the civil service exam because the score had no hope of passing. Then one day, I received a call from a college senior I wasn't very close with. There was a job that was just right, but it was not graduation season, so there was no suitable person. It was a well-known company in our industry, and the salary was quite good, and the future of the company was evaluated as promising. The senior was a graduate student in the doctoral program and belonged to Professor Kim's laboratory, which is quite influential in our industry. I heard that this job introduction was possible thanks to Professor Kim's influence. I wondered why a senior I wasn't familiar with recommended me for the position, but I couldn't miss this opportunity anyway. Received interview information via text message. The interview was held at 2 p.m. at a convention center. It was a bit strange to have an interview at a rental office rather than the head office, but I thought it was because security is so important in our industry. The interview was said to be conducted in a many-to-many manner with a personality interview and a discussion interview. There seemed to be a few more applicants besides me. It was expected that 1 or 2 people from our department would participate in this interview. On the day of the interview, I went to the convention center in a suit. The location of the interview room was not marked on the building, so I got lost. There were about 20 people in the interview waiting area. No one from our department was visible. I knew that there were only a few universities in the country with this major, but it was a little unexpected that there were so many applicants. The receptionist came out and said that the interview process was a bit delayed. Other than that, there was no other guidance. Compared to the value of the company name, it seemed that the interview process was not smooth. Bored, I talked to other applicants. There was something strange about the conversation. There were not only graduates from departments completely unrelated to the major, but also graduates of junior colleges or high school graduates. Many applicants did not know much about the job. Perhaps this interview is a model for selecting non-regular positions for supporting work, rather than hiring full-time positions for those majors. I felt that I had been tricked by my senior, but I comforted myself, thinking that this was all an experience. There was another strange thing. About 5 or 6 of the applicants were in a strange atmosphere. They were talking to other applicants apart from each other, but there was an affinity as if they belonged to an organization. They shot burdensome eyes with their large pupils, making it difficult to look directly into their faces. One of them spoke to me too, asking uncomfortable questions about whether I was interested in psychology, whether there were any difficulties in life, and whether my family relationships were okay. The story about the company seemed to be brought out as a formality at times. Strangely, the story was systematic and seemed to follow some kind of manual. The moment I got a little annoyed and was about to say something to him, the interview started. A group of 5 people entered the interview room. There was also the applicant in my group who asked me an uncomfortable question. There were 5 interviewers, all of different attire and ages. After the group greeting, the interview began. Typical questions such as self-introduction and strengths and weaknesses of personality passed by. The interviewers also did not seem to be very interested in the answer to the question. Then, an interviewer asked me a question. What kind of beliefs are you got? Religion, politics, whatever. It was an embarrassing question, so I couldn't answer properly. Other applicants were similar. There was also an applicant who brought up the story of Catholicism, but the reaction of the interviewer was not good. Then it was the turn of the applicant who had asked me an uncomfortable question. He began a grandiose and lengthy story quoting Erich Fromm's The Art of Loving. The interviewers laughed and nodded when they said that people should be able to look at their self objectively and give unconditional trust to the other person, away from narcissism. I wondered what kind of situation this was. His talk lasted for over 10 minutes. I felt like I was listening to a sermon. Interviews continued after that, but there was little talk about the company's vision or job responsibilities. Abstract questions such as love or faith continued, and the applicant's sermon-like answers continued. The personality interview ended like that, and the next was the discussion interview. Can I really influence others? It's an abstract subject, and the way it was conducted was strange. It was that the interviewers would participate in the discussion along with the applicants. The discussion flowed according to the progress of the interviewer, and the applicants seemed to listen to the interviewer's sermon while arguing. Then, suddenly, I got goosebumps. The burdensome eyes of the applicant who asked me uncomfortable questions and the eyes of the interviewers looked the same. After the interview, the applicant offered to have an after-party with several people, but I declined. A few days later, I received a text message telling me to enter the training center because I passed the interview. It was an urgent situation to get a job, but I gave up on joining the company. I called the department office to ask for understanding from the lab that arranged the job. I asked about the senior who introduced me to the job, and the answer that came back was unexpected. That senior dropped out of graduate school a few months ago. Just in case, I asked about the company I was interviewing for. The company has recently been listed on the KOSPI and has grown in size, so the answer came back that it recruits employees only through public loans. I hung up. Time passed and I passed the civil service exam. It was thanks to the low-cut line support. I went through a normal interview and was notified of the final acceptance. I enjoyed the joy of passing and passed the time watching TV after a long time. It was a documentary accusing a new pseudo-religion. It is said that they recruit people by pretending to be a company interview and send notifications of acceptance. Afterwards, under the name of training new recruits, they confined people to a remote building in the countryside and brainwashed them. It is said that the pseudo-religious incident was revealed because the building caught fire and there were deaths. The building where the fire accident occurred was the same training center I was notified of by the acceptance letter.